We have three wonderful individuals on this panel with us. We have Nan Groves Anderson, who's the Utah Main Street Program Director. She works at the Governor's Office of Economic Development. We have Roger Roper, who is our Deputy State Historic Preservation Officer and knows all things Main Street from this reiteration, or this version of Main Street and before. And we have Jared Stewart, who is joining us from Tooele City as the Economic Development Director and a part of Tooele, who is one of our new Main Street programs. So I'm going to welcome Nan on down to begin the presentation. Welcome, Nan.
Thank you, Kelsey. It's wonderful to be here. Thank you all for coming here to learn about the Utah Main Street program. I gotta say, my background's in tourism. I am not from the history side. I'm not from community development. I do work at Go Utah, now known as the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. We were asked about 2 years ago to develop a pilot program reflecting the Main Street program process. So we pulled together a lot of different partners, including different agencies, state agencies. We plotted through a pilot program which focused on Brigham City and Price. I think all of us would agree, Roger, that if we had to do this over again, we probably would have conducted the pilot program a little bit differently. But they were very patient with us as communities go, both mayors highly supportive of the program. We conducted a few facade grants and cobbled together a grant from USDA and again funding from the different state agencies. So we went through the process adhering to the national framework. So I'm going to hope that some of you are familiar with the Main Street America program and possibly their 4-point framework. Anybody here? Okay, a few, great. So we did work with Brigham City and Price to adhere to that 4-point approach, which you'll hear a little bit more about later. We were very pleased to conduct those 4 facade redos, and they were very successful. Some of you might have seen the new facade on the Idle Aisle up in Brigham City. It looks fantastic. We were very excited. So we worked our way through this pilot program, and much to our surprise, there was a huge amount of support for a statewide renewal of a Utah Main Street program. We were able to introduce the idea to the Utah legislature, and lo and behold, those of you that are legislative geeks, you might know a first-year bill normally doesn't get a lot of support, especially when you're asking for an appropriation. Lo and behold, we got it through. The program was established and funded with ongoing funding at Go Utah. So we're now in our first year of implementing this program on a statewide basis. I'm going to run, oops, there we go. So we are a new coordinating program with the National Main Street Center. This is a highly successful program that has been around for 40 years. I like to call it a self-help framework that help communities address downtown revitalization. It works. You'll see the figures there. This has been since the program was conceived as the National Main Street Center back in 1980. $89.57 billion reinvested in Main Street communities. Over 154,000 businesses were started as a result of communities using this framework to focus on downtown revitalization. Over 687,000 jobs created, and very importantly, over 303,000 buildings were rehabilitated. So we do believe that Main Street is a very important component, even here in Utah, of economic development. There you see our pilot program morphs into a statewide program. The tiered approach was implemented in November, and we had 16 communities throughout the entire state designated in either Tier 1 or Tier 2 basis. We're very, very excited that these 16 communities are going to work together, again, utilizing that self-help framework to focus on downtown revitalization. We've got 9 communities at the Tier 1 level and 7 at Tier 2. And Jared's going to talk to you about being a Tier 2 community in Tooele City. You see a few of the aspects of our work. Very excited to work with SHPO. They also were able to work with the National Park Service to gain additional funds to support the program, and Roger will talk a little bit about that as well. So we did come with a bit of funding, candidly, for a statewide program, not a lot, at $355,000, but we're doing everything we can to make sure that that funding gets to the community level. So this year we were able to award $190,000 in community downtown enhancement grants for those 9 Tier 2s. So what is this 4-point approach? This is really the essence of the Main Street program. It is led by local communities that develop into these 4 different aspects. Design, many of you will be familiar with because that does focus on building improvements as well as streetscape. The organizational aspect focuses on forwarding the work of the entire group. How is it funded? Promotion, and this is my background, particularly coming from the tourism space, and I'm so pleased to see that the bulk of our communities that are involved in the Utah Main Street program really do want to start looking at what they have as assets that could further develop their tourism economies. And then the economics, the economic vitality. How does Main Street function as an economic activity for your community? All of those 4 points are basically focused on what's called a community transformation strategy. These aren't esoteric ideas that kind of are pushed out to the community. You all, as community and committee members, develop these strategies. You decide what your downtown revitalization program is going to look like. We come in as a state program and support that. So how will the Utah Main Street program support community efforts? We will provide technical assistance. We will connect the local communities with all of the resources and assistance that is available from the national program. It's amazing the amount of information and the ability for other Main Street programs to share with us. I've not seen it in many areas in economic development. Anyone connected with Main Street is happy to share what they've been through, best practices. It's been an amazing process. We will support your community economic development efforts. Again, a bit of funding assistance. I think you will see an effort go up before the legislative session coming up next year from our group asking for more support and funding for this statewide program. Again, our committee provides access to statewide resources. There you go, all the different aspects involved in a community's Main Street program, be it tourism, we work with building owners, obviously downtown businesses. It's very important that we do have the support of the local elected officials. However, one of the things that we're learning with the national program is it's very, very important that all aspects of your community are involved in this program, i.e., the program cannot be driven exclusively, for example, by elected officials. We need all aspects of the community at the downtown revitalization table. Transportation's involved. We're very, very fortunate to have the state agency, the Utah Department of Transportation, has been involved in our pilot committee, and they're also on our advisory committee. That's not the case in many statewide programs. So again, one of the reasons I love this program in particular is its comprehensiveness. We're so siloed in state government. We've got economic development over here, we've got historic preservation here, we've got community development over here, transportation, you name it, they're all there. This program breaks down those silos and brings together all kinds of different groups. So, gotta be honest with a lot of communities. I get calls at least once a week from another community that wants to be involved and follow this path. I actually live in Torrey, Utah. Anybody been to Torrey? Yay! So you'll know that it's a very, very tiny community of about 300 folks. Is the Main Street program an idea that Torrey could actually look at? Gotta be honest, probably not. Doesn't have a defined downtown area. We don't even have sidewalks. So I do try to be direct and honest with the different communities because it's important that they focus on programs that are going to further the community's goals. And Torrey probably isn't a good candidate for this program. It doesn't have a walkable environment. Candidly, very little attractive architecture. So we do want to rather provide some level of support and resources for any community in Utah that wants to address downtown revitalization. Community designations, there you go. We had, again, great interest. I've got about 10 communities in the pipeline that want to get involved. So we're very excited to see the progress of all these different communities. Distinctiveness is uber important. Whether you're looking at residents or, in my background, especially for the tourism industry. Tourists don't want to go to areas that look like anywhere else. They love distinctive downtowns. And what we're trying to do is to support all of those communities' ability to maximize their current level of visitation in terms of economic impact. Today's economy, place really does matter. I love that graphic. Anybody know where I took that picture? Park City. They've done an amazing job with their Main Street, but I also got to tell you, from our perspective as a committee, Ogden City has an amazing effort. It has been so fantastic to watch what they've done in the last 20 years. How are we going to measure success? Putting on that economic development hat that I wear. Uber important that we report back on our success metrics to all elected officials, but especially to the Utah legislature. So you see what we're going to be reporting on there as required by the national group, but also in our enabling legislation, we're going a step above that and including businesses retained and or expanded. We're going to look at a decrease in vacancies in our participating communities. We're also going to look at the number of events and participants, again, looking at that tourism space. So that's a really, really quick overview of our program. Again, this is a reiteration of a program that was started by some fantastic people. You might know Bim Oliver. He's speaking here later on today. He was involved in the first iteration of the program in the mid-90s to the early 2000s. So we're building on some great work that has been done before, and it's been really a lot of fun to introduce this program again. So with that, I think, Roger, it's up to you. This is Roger Roper with the State Historic Preservation Office.
Try to figure this out. So, historic preservation is a key component of the Main Street program. In fact, when it started in 1980, the Main Street program was started by the National Trust for Historic Preservation, a national nonprofit group. And they realized at the time that downtowns were dying. The historic downtowns were dying. They'd been bypassed by freeways, there were strip malls, all sorts of things. And they also realize you can't just put a plaque on a building and save it and have it be viable in the community. You need a broader strategy. So they came up with this plan, and as Nan said, it's been going for 40 years. So it's been refined, it's been very successful. But I'll be talking about the historic preservation component, which is really that design component. So those are the 4 points that all need to happen in a local Main Street program. But I'm just going to talk mostly about the design part, because that's where we're talking about buildings and the streetscape, and that's what we deal with on the historic preservation side. Our office, the State Historic Preservation Office, the SHPO, I'll be referring to it as SHPO, so get used to that. And I do want to say too that I was involved early on with the state program that was in Utah in the 90s and early 2000s. Then I moved to Oregon and worked for the Oregon SHPO, and we got a Main Street program going there. So I got to see Main Street in action in another part of the country and in a different state. So part of what I'm talking about is based on those two experiences. But the programs we have, I'm not going to go through all of them. We have an archaeologist, of course, but the historic building team deals with these things. National Register. We have technical assistants. So we have a preservation architect on our staff. Probably the only architect on the state payroll who can go out and do consultation at no cost for building owners. We have tax credits and other financial incentives that are enticements to building owners to revitalize their buildings. And the main grant program we have is the CLG, or Certified Local Government Grant Program, where we can give grants to partner communities around the state to promote their priorities in historic preservation. And it turns out a lot of them end up focusing, if not eventually they focus on their downtowns, because that's the core of their community. So CLG grants can be a part of the Main Street effort as well. And we're not the only game in town when it comes to historic preservation in the state. Of course, Preservation Utah is a key partner, and they've been around for 55 plus years, and they're the nonprofit side. So we're state government, they're nonprofit. We can each do different things, and so it's a great partnership, and we work very closely together. And there are some local partners too, like the Weber County Foundation that's been around a long time, for decades, and they're really doing a lot of fabulous things as well. And then there are local, like the Friends of Historic Spring City. So that's kind of what we do. I'm going to go back to this one because, so when we work with the community, say your community says we want to be Main Street, we're signed up, you could invite us to come in and help you with the design part of it. And when you're a Main Street community, you set up 4 committees based on those 4 approaches. So you'd have a design committee, and they'd be charged with trying to make the downtown look better, the buildings and the streetscape. And you can have us come in, you could have a consultant come in, you could have, some folks from other more advanced Main Street communities come in and advise you. But one of the things we say is do an initial assessment. Walk up and down, look at your buildings, note what's good and not so good about them. And same with your streetscape. And we can help with some of that, and there's some tools you can use, but you want to start to get a sense of what you've got. And what are the challenges? And then you come up with some priorities. Where do you want to start? And usually we say start with the easy thing. Go after the low-hanging fruit. Go after the things that aren't going to cost you a lot. And you'll be surprised at how much that can make a difference. And then every one of the successes you have, they may be small. You need to celebrate those and let people know. Take before and after photos. And that does a couple things. It lets the community, larger communities, start to understand that you're making progress. Sorry. I thought my voice was projecting well enough, but okay. Oh, okay. Where was I? Celebrating successes. So I was saying, so you want the broader community to understand that you're making progress downtown, but it also puts a real boost into your Main Street committee's sense of accomplishment, to start to see that we've done this and we've done that. So we say, come up with some easy short-term goals, even though you have long-term ones. You want the whole downtown to be revitalized. You want all the buildings being used, but that's not going to happen overnight. So we'll come in and help you do that sort of thing to the extent we can. And what we can't do, there are other partners, as Nan has mentioned. UDOT's one of them. So, yeah, buildings and streetscapes. So just a couple things. So look at the photo on the upper left. Anything strike you about that one? It's nice and tidy, the little strip of buildings there, but all the storefronts are blank. It's like they have the blinds drawn, or they got butcher paper in the front. I don't know what's going on there. That's not inviting. That's not a sign of a successful Main Street. So if you're doing your assessment, you'd want to pay attention to that. Like, something's not right here, and there's no sign, very little signage. What are these businesses even doing? The upper right photo, upper floor of multi-story buildings on main streets are typically vacant or underused. You want to note that. Why is that the case? What are you going to do about it? That's not an easy solution sometimes because of building code and other things, but these are the things you'd want to pay attention to. The theater sign there is something you might notice. Maybe it's an old sign that's no longer a theater. Do you leave it? Does it look derelict, or is it kind of quaint and antique looking and you leave it? Well, here they kept it even though it's no longer a theater. They spruced it up, put neon on it, got the neon activated again, and it becomes kind of a community billboard now for what events are coming up. So those are just some of the things, if you go about looking in your community with that design hat on, you want to pay attention to. We know you're not architects, you're not engineers, you're not going to pick up on some of the really structural things, but that's fine. Go after the things you notice. And then finally, the photo on the bottom right, look at your streetscape as a whole and really the traffic. Most main streets are state highways. That's just the way it is. And so you've got UDOT, and they're a willing partner now in a way they've never been before, and most DOTs around the country are not. They're about traffic only. But you want to pay attention to the volume of the traffic, the speed of the traffic, the pedestrian friendliness or unfriendliness. Can you get from one side of the street to the other without risking your life? Are there crosswalks? Are there plantings? Are there medians? What things can be done to make it a more inviting, pedestrian-friendly environment? So, and then you get a building owner who's all excited. She's just bought a building, she's got a business, and you know, she's not thrilled with the way that building looks, but she's wondering what's hiding under that siding. You know, it's been covered over. And we can come in and help advise. We've seen that a lot before. First thing we'd say, if you're part of the community and you're lining us, you've set it up, we're going to come in, look at several buildings, meet with the building owners. First thing we'd say is look for old photos of these buildings. That will tell you a lot about what's under there. And typically, when you have this kind of blank aluminum covering that's been put on a building, the old stuff is under there. And that's the good thing, because they just did it in a quick and dirty way. Sure enough, it was. So it's a great little storefront, but it's deteriorated. Now, how do you go about fixing that up? And that's where we can come in with our historic preservation hats on and say, here's the right method, here's the wrong method. You know, these are the kinds of things you should be trying to do there. So we'll advise you on all these things that have the bullet points. We'll even note some of the structural concerns, but we're not going to be, again, your consulting architect or engineer totally. We'll just make our observations, but we'll get you on the right track. And if you're interested in tax credits, because there are requirements, if you get those tax credits, you have to do things the right way. We can guide you through on that as well. And of course, all old buildings need system upgrades, electrical, plumbing, HVAC, all that kind of stuff. So those are the kind of things, and we can help write, I call these kind of building doctor visits, and we can write you a little prescription for each building. These are the priorities. This is what you should do first. Here's what you shouldn't do. So that's kind of how we like to work in a community. Now let's talk streetscapes, because that matters a lot, that curb appeal when you're driving through a community. Would you want to pull over here in Lehigh? Well, it looks attractive, it looks clean, it looks like somebody cares. And so this is very typical of the kind of upgrades we see in streetscapes in communities that want to revitalize their main streets. You've got the standard things, and to me, sometimes you look at these and you say, oh yeah, they've done all the normal things. It's like they've gone to the Streetscape improvement store and bought one of everything. You got your planters, you got your light posts, you got your pavers, you got your trash receptacles, you got flower plantings. That's fine. Why do they do that? Why does everyone want to do it? Because it works. And you don't have to do a generic one. You can base it a little off of the character of your community. So you've got some notable design ethic that you're trying to promote. And that fits in with what Nan said about this transformational strategy. What is it who are you trying to attract? What kind of customers are you looking for? And what is the look and feel you're trying to promote in your community? And so one thing to notice, so on this bottom slide, notice there's that little alleyway going through. There was maybe a building there before, it's gone. It was probably vacant, probably had weeds, probably had, water bottles blown in there by the wind, whatever. That's the kind of thing you'd note when you do your initial assessment in a downtown. Say, this doesn't look so good. How do we make that work? Well, make it into something that's attractive. Don't you want to walk down that little alley and just maybe sit in the shade and enjoy it? There's a functional part of it too, because when you come down that alley, it gets you to the interior of the block where there's often parking. And oftentimes the store owner will say, well, let's put a better face on that alley side of our building if so many customers are coming in. And so that's the kind of thing that can happen as well in a downtown streetscape sort of sense. So just keep those things in mind when you're thinking of the design components. And then we have some tools that you can use to kind of learn about the anatomy of a commercial building. You need to know the building parts. You need to know what those traditional components are so you can start to enhance those and make the best of the architectural character that you have. So these are online. These are on our website. We have some of these. There's this one on just basic commercial buildings. We've got one on signs and awnings. That's an important part, signage. And if you notice in the big slide on the upper right, there's signs that stick out from the front of the building perpendicular. Those are called blade signs. And what's the value there? Because people who are walking down the sidewalk can see what the business is. Most signs are on the front of the building and they're meant for people in a car. So you've got to think about it. What's going to work? What's missing here for somebody who gets out of their car and just wants to walk up and down and see what's going on? And the awnings have a functional purpose. They can help protect from the weather, from the sun, heat coming in. They can also serve as signage where you can put something on that awning. So these little guides can be very helpful to study. And then paint colors. Everybody wants to know what color to paint it, and we don't get into that much. All the black and white photos that we use to understand old buildings, they're black and white. We don't know the colors, and it doesn't matter that much. Just don't do anything goofy or radical. And there's some basic guidelines. You've got your base color, that's your brick building maybe. You have a major accent and you have a minor accent. Typically, that's all you want. You don't want it to be the coat of many colors kind of building. That's not the right color scheme to follow. So there we have it. That's how the design component works in general. And our office is there to help you. The other preservation partners are there to help you understand your buildings, understand what you should and shouldn't be doing. We all know that your downtown has changed over time, and we don't need to take it back exactly the way it was. We need to make improvements that make it function better, look better, make people want to get out of their car and enjoy your community. Sometimes that means maybe your sidewalks need to be wider than they were historically. Maybe you need to have trees, street trees planted, so it's more inviting. There's a little shade. But you don't want to change it too much either. So it's this nice balance that we're trying to strike here. Keep the best of the past, make it more functional for the future. So that is my presentation, and I think Jared, there you go.
All right. Well, thank you everyone for being here. these guys are the experts. I'm just someone who's going to tell you what we've been doing the last year and trying to, enact all this and really start some preservation efforts in Tooele City. We haven't done too much. We've just really at the beginning of our efforts, and I'm really excited to get into what that means for us, and hopefully that will be of benefit to you as you try to start, as I assume many of us are aspiring preservationists, as you try to start your efforts. Hopefully this is some benefit to you. So I want to talk about partnerships, right? One thing they say a lot, and that I heard a couple weeks ago in a visit from Main Street America, is that it's not with you, we're with you, not for you, right? We're working together on this. Partnerships are huge. Could include business owners, museum directors, civic leaders, real estate, universities. These are all partners that I have in Tooele City, but especially the business owners. They're invested. They really want to see a profit on their business, right? So that's kind of one of our big partners in our commercial Main Street area. Talk to each other, understand needs, and offer solutions, right? As I've started to build partnerships, you just can't ask and ask. You just got to be offering solutions, right? Helping each other, actually finding what their needs are and matching those with be it a grant or some grit and hard work, just something you can do to make a connection that will benefit them. And then really, this is a flyer. 1 year ago in April 2021, I took this flyer around to every property owner and business in our Main Street district in Tooele. And we started a focus group, right? And that was all to actually start and create an economic development strategic plan, which we did. So that was our first focus group in April 2021. It's only been a year. It kind of amazed me, like, oh my gosh, it's been a year. And part of that was it's been a whole year, and then it's like, oh, it's only been a year. So, and then in August, we did a second group, and we started the Downtown Alliance for Tooele City. In October, we kind of saw that coming, and in August, we started our Downtown Alliance. In October, the Main Street program launched with Nan, and then by November, we had a chair and a vice chair and subcommittees. And that's a big deal, right? I think those subcommittees, it all starts to, kind of come together. At first, you have this organization, and it's a little messy, right? We've got one of our Downtown Alliance members here, right? I think he'd probably agree, like, didn't function perfect at first, right? But you give it some time, you give it some structure, you start to delegate, you build trust, you build those partnerships, and now we have functioning committees. Grant funding, right? You gotta have some money to back up any programs, initiatives, things that you want to start in your community or whatever your lens is, right? We've been able to secure $370,000 in the last year for our downtown Tooele City, and I'm so excited about that, right? That's a huge new investment in our downtown, and that comes from the Utah Main Street program, from Roger and Nan here, both of their organizations, and also from the county, Tooele County, and that's kind of where our funds are coming from. Very exciting. There's resources out there. You just gotta, start making those partnerships and connections to find those. Making progress, right? This is a list of our subcommittees and members and some of the things they're working on, right? We've got a downtown event happening on May 14th. We've got our design group trying to start telling the stories of these buildings, right? Bringing together the historic photos with what's there now and have design recommendations. We've got an economic vitality group that in a couple weeks, they're gonna have the first focus group to have a strategic recruitment coalition, right? So group of real estate professionals, property owners with vacant space, right? And us kind of coming together to say, here's what we could do in these spaces. And we've got art projects. We've got a mural that we have commissioned and is up and running. and their high school kids are taking photos in front of it all the time, which is so exciting to see people coming to our downtown to do that. And then we actually are just having 10 buffalo shipped that we can then paint. And, you know, you've seen them in other communities, right? But the high school is the Tooele Buffs, right? The Tooele Buffaloes, right? So we can get those buffaloes in here, and then we're going to have sponsorships. We're going to have businesses sponsor those buffalo, paint them, and use that sponsorship money ongoing. Every year you can sponsor a buffalo, and that will go into creating more art projects in the community, right? Creative way, totally, you know, that's not something I thought of. It was a member of our Downtown Alliance who came up with that idea and said, hey, let's do this, and we've made it happen. So this is Norma, who's from the National Main Street America group in front of our mural. She was here just a couple weeks ago. But building momentum, Roger kind of noted on some of these things, so I'll just, you know, glaze over these. But celebrating those wins, thanking your partners, right? Everybody's volunteering on our Downtown Alliance, so it's really important just to make sure that they know that how much I appreciate them and that the city appreciates their work. Keeping the perspective, right? It takes a long time to get things done, so just remembering that we're doing these small things. Here's our longer vision. We'll get there, right? And over a year, we've accomplished some stuff. And then communicating. The more I can send out, especially now that we've got these subcommittees, I'm noticing, you know, some people that are on this subcommittee are still interested in what this other committee's doing, right? So having clear communication, talking to each other, letting everybody know what's going on in these subcommittees so it doesn't kind of separate, and hopefully that applies in whatever you projects you are hoping to accomplish, that you can communicate with your partners and be more effective. You know, where is this, right? That's a question, right? Is this Tooele? Is this Tooele, right? This is anywhere in America, right? And 2 weeks ago when Norma came to town, she asked, she told us, okay, I came here, this is the first time I've ever been to Tooele. I wanted to drive through town and see when I felt like I had arrived. When am I in Tooele, right? Her hotel was near kind of Walmart, this, you know, and she's, in her words, this is anywhere in America, right? Doesn't make you distinct. And as I think about it from the economic development perspective, and my job is to kind of create new investment in the community, this isn't unique, it's anywhere in America, right? So to Norma's point, let's see if this will keep going. Maybe. There we go. Another example, just strip centers, right? What's Tooele? What's Utah County? What's Salt Lake County? It's also similar. But when and I asked her then, okay, Norma, tell me then, when did you feel like you arrived? When did you get here? This is it, in the historic downtown. And the point today is that, as Nan mentioned, uniqueness, distinctiveness is important. The Walmart-style developments, those empower the uniqueness of our main streets and our downtowns and our historic areas. This is where true value exists, right? This is where there's a sense of place and a uniqueness that your community and your neighborhood can grasp at. So, you know, we did this whole thing. Don't read all these words, right? We did this exercise with Norma to talk about what our unique assets are, and then what are our non-unique challenges, right? So many communities and neighborhoods have the same challenges. So questions for you are, what makes you unique? What is your unique population? What is your demographic in a commercial Main Street going to come to visit, right? What can you put in those vacant storefronts that people would be interested in? And you know, you can there's tools out there from Esri and other tools where we can actually analyze what is our demographic. And it's interesting how on the spot those can be. Okay, so this is just an example, a pet project of mine, right? I looked at Walmart in Tooele. I looked at the assessed value on the county's tax rolls, and then I divided it by the acreage of the parcel that it sits on. That's Walmart, right, in Tooele. Dairy Delight, your classic local diner, is more valuable per acre than Walmart. How about that, right? This 60 South Main is a vacant building under remodel right now. It's more valuable per acre than Walmart. Another, recent jeweler and mattress store that are kind of on one parcel. Parking. The storefront, more valuable than Walmart per acre. Another man's treasure, an antique store, phenomenal place, really fun, right on the intersection of downtown. $1.7 million per acre is the value of that. Premier Athletics, 100 years ago, that was a movie theater. Before our historic theater even existed, this was a movie theater, right? More valuable than Walmart per acre. And this is a little Hispanic market that's open 24/7 every day, not 24/7, I guess. It's open 365 days a year. In our community, $1.9 million per acre. This is where true value is. And I think that any community can do this and look at this. This is just an exercise that I've kind of started doing to talk to the community about the value their buildings hold. And it's interesting, as I've done this and presented it at the Chamber of Commerce, we even had one property owner who said she was approached by 3 realtors right after this presentation. And she was like, wow, they knew she was moving, right? And people are interested. When people understand that there is a high value in these properties and a high efficiency, it matters. And if you tear these down and if we don't preserve them, the value leaks away. The value, what will come next, will likely not be what is there now. So with you, not for you, that's kind of the end of. I hope we didn't go too far over time. So thank you.
So I'm a little shorter than our friend Roger. So I'm going to open it up for questions. So if there's any from the audience, I would love to take your questions. If not, I've prepared my own. Yeah, would you like to go through it?
I'd like to hear a little bit more about your partnership with UDOT.
And just for the people online, the question was, what the partnerships with UDOT, how is that working and how important that is?
Yeah, I can start it. Okay. For us, UDOT, we've had several folks just come out to our Downtown Alliance as we meet. They're interested in collaborating, in starting discussions, in creating a plan for streetscapes in our downtown areas, and they're interested in what our goals are, right? I think this is, as Nana said, this is maybe unique. In terms of DOTs, they're actually interested in kind of listening to what our goals are, and what that partnership is. I think is still growing and developing as the Main Street program is new as well, right? So we're still determining what that is. But what would you add, Ann?
So I think from a statewide perspective, we're so pleased, number one, that UDOT is with us. Each community is going to approach their transportation, their streetscape, and their design committee differently. What I've been told is that UDOT, au contraire to years past, is now a willing player in local planning efforts, which apparently has not always been the case. I'm not saying there aren't going to be rocky scenarios, there will be, but we're just very, very pleased from a statewide basis that UDOT wants to be involved. It's a different day at UDOT. They're willing to work with us to solve community issues.
And part of that is that the legislature funded UDOT a few years ago to create planning positions, staff positions in each of the 4 regions. So for the first time, UDOT has planners who are thinking about the community as a whole rather than the pavement only. And so that's a major shift. And they've got a statewide planner, and he's on the advisory committee. So they've really stepped up to realize that they've got to be a more integrated community partner with where their roads are passing through. So, And they've put out a report. It should be coming out, the final version, called State and Maine. And you could probably find it online.
Great. Did I see? Yeah, Ronnie.
Thank you so much for your presentation. I personally enjoyed it. One of my questions for you all is, do you all have like the first impressions implementation as part of your program for cities that do want to utilize the funding and tools? So essentially, having someone who's never been to that community and come in and kind of analyze and get a feel for the space. Sometimes it's so good to have fresh eyes on the actual project, and they make note of something that's extremely unique that the community has never even thought about on capitalizing and building off of.
And before they hop in, just for the folks online, the question was, is the Main Street program utilizing like a fresh perspective, fresh set of eyes to just give, we're sometimes we get a little bit too into our communities and we might not see something that's there. So what resources is the program utilizing for that?
So Nan brought in, the National Main Street America program actually sent someone here 2 weeks ago to come and visit all the Tier 2 communities. And that was a treat. It really was. It was awesome to have Norma, that was her name, come and visit the community, walk around. It gave me all kinds of ideas, right? And that was just wonderful. So yes, I would say, and Nan can add anything, they're bringing in people from outside the community to kind of give that fresh perspective.
Right, so again, one of the beauties of this program is its inclusivity. So I think through the different committee structure, you do have an opportunity to bring in fresh voices, new voices. However, I want to bring up, in the tourism space, through the State Office of Tourism, who is a Main Street partner, they actually have a program called a Secret Shopper. And they do provide grant funding and support to communities who want to address that very issue. It's been done in the past by a gentleman by the name of Roger Brooks, who has been extensively involved in Utah's tourism resources for like the past 10 years or so. So it's a great idea. Thank you.
Just one other thought is sometimes it's good to do cross-pollinating with other communities, especially with a community that's been at it for a while. They could come in, they kind of understand things better, they can provide that fresh-eyed approach, and then you do the same for them. So we're really trying to get these communities to work together and share information. You're not in competition. And so all these things can work for you.
And I'll also add on to that the Main Street program is national. So the conference is later this month. It's an amazing network. So we're doing it here in Utah, but we're also connecting our Utah communities to people in Maine or people in California and everywhere in between that might be facing similar issues, and really trying to creatively solve problems and inspire the community. I think I saw a hand over there. Yeah.
Yeah, I have a question, because this is going to require more construction workers, and there's obviously a shortage. And the laws as they are written prohibit people who have criminal records from getting a journeyman's license in certain trades. And so that's a major issue of untapped labor that was implemented wrongly because of racism, because of the war on drugs. So what are we doing about that to make it so people with negative histories are able to obtain the certifications in order to get to work done?
So for question online is just talking about working shortages based off of restrictions on if you're allowed to be in construction, and the legislation that has restricted that. So, I mean, I think it's construction. Frankly, it's kind of all industries, and it's also an issue with workers, but materials too. So maybe we can just address his question, but more broadly as well, just how can we make impacts with the working shortages that we have, the material shortages? Is there ways as communities too that we can be impactful to our legislators to say this is what we need? How can we make some changes?
Right, it's a big challenge. Most of you will have seen in the newspaper, Utah now has the lowest unemployment rate in the nation, 2%. In Juab County, it's less than 2%. These are extraordinary times. I think you will see coming out of our office, we actually have a new director of immigration. So the governor is looking at starting some new support and resources, mechanisms to take advantage of working with the immigrant community, new to America community. In terms of supply chain, your guess is as good as mine at this point. It will continue to be a challenge. But again, I think the beauty of this Main Street program is back to that inclusiveness idea. If the community wants to work with certain demographics, absolutely, the framework is adaptable to any of that. I don't have any easy answers for it. This is a national problem, right? So, but one thing again, the governor's taking steps to work with, again, the immigrant community. That's out of our office. So stay tuned.
Did you have a question?
I have a question. So in Farmington, we are in the process of creating a historical Main Street district.
Mhm.
And we have an old building that should be like a focal point when you come into the city. It's a four-way stop. It's a beautiful building, or it was a beautiful building. Now it's covered in aluminum, something or other. And the person who owns it is very unwilling and unwanting to work with us. How do you go about doing that?
Well, that's a tough one, and that's.
Can I
sure,
just repeat
sure.
the question? Sorry. So the question was this person's from Farmington and speaking about a building in the downtown that was once maybe a gem of the downtown and now has been covered up. So I think speaking to this particular building, but also the tensions and the conflicts that may happen when we have property owners or stakeholders that aren't maybe so willing or interested in participating.
Well, yeah, so that's a problem in communities where you've got long-term property owners who aren't willing to put a nickel into their building, and the tenants may want to do something, but the building owner may not be interested. So you can do a few things. Historic photos can be very stimulating for what potential, again, what's hiding under that siding. And if you have any incentive programs like Jared mentioned, if you could offer some kind of grants. So we had some grant money we got from the National Park Service this past year, $675,000. We were able to spread among 5 communities, 21 projects. It was a 3-to-1 match. 3-part grant, 1-part property owner. That gets their attention, I'll tell you. So sometimes it's just taking time, winning them over. A lot of times they're jaded. Say, oh, we've heard all this before. It never worked before. What's so different about this one? Be patient. And some little successes can start to break that dam.
What if you provided all those resources to them and they still denied? Because I was involved with this, and we had a Davis County Main Street program, we had a shipping grant, and we gave some family members that were interested. The property owner just was not. So after you throw everything at them, is it just like broader community interest to try to push them to do it, or?
In a way, time will solve it, right? You'll see small wins and you can celebrate those small wins on some properties, but then I see this in Tooele too. There's other property owners who just don't want to be involved yet, right? But you just have to accomplish what you can and do what you can right now and work with the people who are willing to work with you. And as you have resources, hopefully they'll understand that it's with you, not for you. We want to do this with you and break that down. And in the end of it, eventually the property owner will change, I suppose, if they really never come around. That's like, oh, guys, it's a long game, but.
14 houses on Main Street, and they're unwilling to work with us at all. And all of their homes are going,
Yeah, and it is hard when a property owner isn't local. That's another challenge, and something that we see in Tooele too. There's these investor groups, or like Lagoon for you in Farmington. That's a challenge. It's a little harder to build that relationship. Maybe sometimes I think it's just about finding the right person to talk to. If somebody at Lagoon isn't willing, maybe somebody else is, and it's a game of trying to find the right person to talk to. I don't know if you guys would add anything else.
I think Jared hit the nail on the head, and that is, this is a long-term process. It's a long commitment. It took a long time for these buildings to get in terrible shape, so it's not going to happen overnight. But we do feel that, the long term, competition's fantastic, right? When you see a building over here being renovated, new business come in, excitement coming, people hanging out in your downtown, boy, that can be a strong motivator. So, yeah, I mean, it's not a quick fix situation.
Okay. I'm so sorry. I have to make a choice because we only have probably time for one question. So I will. Okay, you've won. The question was just about tourism funds and how are they funded?
So really quickly, not to get too far out into the weeds, and I'm happy to chat with you later about it, but the major funding for the state effort comes from the legislature. This year, the Office of Tourism has, I believe, $25 million to market and promote the entire state of Utah as a tourism destination. At the local level, most tourism travel councils are at the county level. Those are primarily funded by transient room tax, which is a lodger's tax that anyone pays who stays in a hotel room in the area. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, we got ours from our county tourism board, and they get it from extraction and gas and oil, like lease. There's like a fee, associated with those types of permits in the county, and so they have they give away like $1 million a year for tourism events, whether that be well, there's all kinds of tourism events, and we won't get into that, but yeah, so that's where ours come from. It's the county, and they get it from extraction fees.
Great. Well, I am so sad that the session's over because this was amazing. Why don't we give our panelists a round of applause, and thank you so much.